Nobody wants to overpay. Whether you're buying a car, whether you're buying clothing, or whether you're buying a house, ideally you want to get a good deal. You want to get that house a few percent below market value rather than a few percent over market value. And in our market, timing plays a significant role in being able to do that. So when we say timing, we're talking about two things in particular. The first of those is timing in the sense of seasons. So if we look at our market over the course of a year, there's a season where it makes more sense for sellers to sell, and there's a period where it's better to be a buyer, where you have a little more leverage, a little more control, there's a little less competition. So the best time to sell, and by extension, the worst time to be a buyer, is in the late winter, early spring, specifically right around mid-January through the end of April, perhaps early May. That is the sweet spot for sellers. There's no single reason why that is, but what we see often is that a lot of buyers are really, they exit the winter holiday season, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, with a renewed focus to buy a home. So there's more buyers entering the market. A lot of larger companies are coming off of bonus season, so people have more money in their pockets. Those buyers who are particularly focused on schools, some of the school districts have deadlines when residents have to have an address, have to be in their home in order to get their kids into those specific schools for the upcoming fall semester. That plays a role. Weather is nicer, particularly as we get into the spring and more people are willing to go out and go from open house to open house to open house. Whatever the case, all of this adds up to more buyers in the market, which adds up to more competition, more offers, more bidding wars, and higher prices. It's not uncommon at this time of year to see houses going significantly over asking price. If you look at the crazy headlines, in another video we talked about a house in Berkeley that was listed at 1.3 million. It was only underlisted by a little bit, in fact, if you looked at where it should have sold, but it ended up selling for 2.3 million. Houses in Sunnyvale going $1 million or more over asking price. More often than not, those news stories come out of the spring selling season. So what's the best time to be a buyer? The worst time to be a buyer is kind of in that mid-January through April, early May range. The best time to be a buyer is actually the peak of summer. Once all the schools are out, typically several weeks after Memorial Day until close to Labor Day. It's a good time for buyers, relatively speaking, for a few reasons. For one, we tend to see more inventory. So what we often see is, I guess we learn from history that we don't learn from history. So a lot of people who are kind of on the fence selling, they'll see their neighbors sell their house maybe during January or February or March and get a crazy high price for that. And then they want to get in on the action, and they're a little slow to get all the wheels turning, and by the time their house hits the market, it's June, July, or August. Well, that's not an uncommon story. A lot of folks do that. So we tend to see more inventory hitting the market in the peak of summer, and that inventory doesn't get absorbed, doesn't get pulled off the market as quickly as it does in the spring because we tend to see less buyers. At the same time, we're seeing more inventory. So why do we have less buyers this time of year? Again, there's no single reason, but there's been some studies, and the best metrics that we have suggest that roughly 1 to 4 high income individuals in the Bay Area tend to take a vacation in the summer. What we see a lot of times is people who are serious buyers in the spring, sometimes they just get burnt out. They get frustrated. They're tired of dealing with the bidding wars. And then they bail from the market at exactly the time they should be re-upping their efforts because they have a better opportunity in the summer. And then we also, again, see less buyers who are really prioritizing specific schools or specific school districts. Whatever the case, whatever the confluence of factors, it all adds up to less buyers in the market. At the same time, we have a little more inventory, which basically means there's less competition, less offers, less bidding wars, and better prices. So for instance, a home that would have got maybe 15 offers in the beginning of March may only get 5 to 7 offers, all other things being equal, in July or August, which means there's a lesser opportunity for the seller of that home to counter offer everyone. There's more risk to a seller to do a counter because the pool is smaller and there's a chance that someone could walk away or take offense to the counter offer. So whatever the reason, and again, it usually comes down to less buyers, there's less competition and you get better prices. It's not uncommon to get 3 to 5% discounts this time of year relative to just a couple months earlier. So I'm going to throw a chart up here from the Paragon Group. Now, the Paragon Group was subsequently acquired by Compass. The chart's a bit dated. It only goes back to 2019. But if you look at it, you'll see the numbers bear out what we've been talked about, that the biggest spikes you see in prices are typically like that January, February, March, April period. And then things flatline, maybe even take a little dip as we enter the summer. This happens more years than not. Now, if the peak of summer is the best time to be a buyer, there is a runner-up. Another good time where it makes a little more sense if you're looking to buy a home to wait and look during this period is the winter holidays, specifically that short little period between Thanksgiving and New Year's. Now, contrary to the summer period, you typically see a little less inventory this period because sellers know that there's less buyers in the market. So a lot of sellers, particularly those who have time on their hands, are willing to wait for the highest price. They're just going to wait to put their home on the market till after the new year. But here's the thing, a lot of buyers are going to wait too. So there's less buyers in the market. And if you're finding sellers who are bringing their home to the market during this period, there's a greater chance that that seller is either a distressed seller, meaning there's something going on in their life that they need to sell that property, and they might not be as keen to see the price or to need the price to go as high as possible, or there's a chance they may need to sell that property in the current tax year for tax purposes. Maybe they have a loss they're trying to offset. Who knows? Whatever the case, if people are putting their houses on the market between Thanksgiving and Christmas at a time when there's less buyers in the market, although there's not a whole lot of inventory, there's a whole lot of stock. If you're a buyer who finds something that works for you during that period, you have a better chance of getting a bargain on it, certainly, than if the same home were to hit the market just a month or two later. Now, here's the caveat to everything we've been talking about so far. It doesn't always play out this way. 2017 and 2020 are perfect examples. In 2017, we had such a supply and demand imbalance. Demand the whole year far exceeded supply, that those dynamics outweighed the dynamics of seasonality. Sure, some people went on vacation. Sure, some people dropped out of the market in the summertime, but there were still so many more buyers in the market than there were houses for sale that we never really saw that plateauing or that dip in the summer like we see most years. The market just went up the entire year. In some neighborhoods, the market went up 25% from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And then there's something like we saw in 2020, which is an act of God, force majeure, something that no one really saw coming. COVID hit, the lockdowns hit right in the middle of that peak selling season, and it really aborted that period. So when things started opening up in the summer, what we saw was no signs of seasonality at all. In fact, demand just picked right back up and the market took off. So this is usually the case so far here in 2021. It's playing out that way, but don't put all your eggs in the seasonality basket and think if you're trying to buy a home that waiting is always going to be the best option. More often than not, it may be, but that's not always the case. So that's the broad zoomed out view, kind of looking at the market across a full year. But even during, the times where it doesn't typically make sense to be a buyer, at different times throughout the year, both in seasons that favor sellers and seasons that are more buyer friendly, you're going to find little pockets and periods of time where there's less competition. And therefore, little pockets, weekends here and there, where you're going to find a better opportunity to land a good deal. What you see, when you see this happen a lot, is with very, very big holidays, like July 4th, like Easter. A lot of agents don't want to put their properties on the market during these holidays, believing that less people are going to be in the market. So agents don't typically talk to each other. If they have a house that's coming on the market, other agents don't typically know that until a sign's up in the yard. So what you see around these big holidays is folks will tend to go a week early or a week late. So you have a greater likelihood during these periods of seeing very similar homes pop up in the same neighborhoods. So where a neighborhood may only typically have one house on the market at a time, maybe someone's rushing to get to market or holding their listing to get to the market, and now they've got 3 properties on the market in the same neighborhood at the same time. What this does is it splits the demand. You have the same amount of buyers, but now instead of having one property with possibly 12 to 15 people offering on it, now you have 3. Again, it's a better opportunity to get a good deal. So just to wrap up, homes in our market, they're not cheap. Everybody wants a good deal. Everyone wants to buy a house at less than market value, but hopefully now you see that when you're really focusing on buying that home, both in the micro and as far as individual weekends around holidays, and in the macro as far as what season of the year can really impact whether you're getting that home for below or above market value. Hopefully you found some value in this. If you did, leave a comment below or give us a like and subscribe, and we'll keep pumping out content like this. Thanks so much.